Look, you can believe what you like, because I'm not here to tell you how to think. In fact, I have no interest in trying to convert you to my beliefs. But there are some basic things you need to be clear about if you want to come to understand the spiritual path, especially how that was taught by the Buddha over 2,500 years ago. And one of these fundamental questions is, if God didn't create the universe, then where the hell did everything come from? Now the answer isn't what you might think. I mean, we know that science claims that the universe came from the Big Bang. But really, this leaves us with more questions than it does answers. The question that begs to be asked is, what happened before the Big Bang? Because we're told that the cause for the Big Bang was a superheated field of radiation. So where did that come from? And also, where did the laws of the universe come from? Were they already in place before the Big Bang? Now the Hindus teach that God is responsible for everything. That whether I experience happiness or suffering, it's all down to God. And understanding this, then we're taught we need to accept our lot in life. Now I'm not saying that acceptance is a bad thing. Acceptance is a very good thing, because it is through accepting our suffering that we grow and we progress on our spiritual path. But there's a danger here, and that is, one might be led to believe that everything is predestined, and that basically there's nothing you can do about it. If it's the will of God, then you will suffer. If it's the will of God, then you will be happy. But this is not what is taught in the Buddha Dharma. So recently then I've been teaching about the truth of suffering, and the fact that we need to transcend the mundane world to go beyond suffering. And what I gather from some people's comments is that they believe that there is no need to improve the mundane world or to transcend it. In fact, many people believe that there is no transcendence from the mundane world, and further, that we have no choice but to experience suffering. Like I said, our pain and our anguish is useful. It's something we can put into practice, and by that we can grow. But do you really think that there's no way to improve the world? If you're honest with yourself, then we don't hold this kind of view. If we believed that everything was predestined, then why on earth would we make a fuss when things didn't go our way? I mean, for example, when you go to the shop and the cashier shortchanges you, you correct them, don't you? You tell them, hey, you shortchanged me. You owe me another $1. You don't just leave it at that and think, well, that's destiny. There's nothing I can do about it. You very much believe that there is something you can do about it. And so because of that, you act out in accordance with your beliefs. But what happens these days is people try to convince themselves that they hold a view that they do not themselves believe in. For example, that everything is predestined. If we fall over and we break our leg, we go to the hospital. We want to fix that, right? We study, we go to university in order to improve our education so we can get a good job. There's almost nobody out there who doesn't understand this point. We've all looked for better employment. We've all tried to improve ourselves in the world. In fact, it's very rare that we're happy with the job that we have. We're always looking for something better, whether that be a better school, a better job, a better partner, a better country to live in. We're never satisfied with what we have. And that's because, fundamentally, we believe we can improve the world. So what did the Buddha teach? Well, the Buddha taught that the world is made by karma. And what you have to understand here is that karma means action. And there are 3 types of actions. The actions of body, speech, and mind. And of these 3, the most important are the actions of mind, the mental karma. And it doesn't really pay to think of karma as being some kind of mystical force. For example, if I have a bad thought and then I walk out the door and bump my head, I think that's my karma. There's some kind of cosmic payback for me having a bad thought. That's not really helpful. Also, it's not very helpful to think of karma as some kind of law that is adjudicated by a Buddha. For example, if I have a bad thought, then the Buddha punishes me for my negative act. It's not like that. Karma is the truth of causality. It means that appearances arise on the basis of causes and conditions. For example, the causes and conditions that came together to form the Big Bang. So there's 2 basic questions here. Why does anything appear at all? And also, why do I sometimes experience happiness and sometimes experience suffering? Now in general, in the West, then we think this is down to luck. And that's because we believe that everything is basically random. For example, if I win the lottery, it was just luck. It was just chance. It had nothing to do with a prior cause or condition. So I want you to consider this. Anyone who's been to a sports game, let's say hockey or football or baseball, when you're in the crowd, you're cheering for your team to do well. And what's more is most people believe that by encouraging and cheering on their team, in some way, they can change the outcome of the match. And this is where we fall into magical or mystical thinking. And it's not so helpful. But what it shows is we don't believe that outcomes are predetermined. For example, in America, there's an election coming up. Many people see this to be the most important election in American history. And on the basis of this, then things could change drastically. But we don't believe that the outcome is predetermined. That's why we go out and vote. Part of the responsibility of a spiritual practitioner is to stand up for truth and justice. You have to use your intelligence to help change outcomes. And principally, you have to do this in a virtuous way. These days, we have this basic feeling that it's okay to abandon virtue in order to achieve the outcomes that we desire. Many politicians these days don't see honesty to be important. In fact, you could say that they believe lying is a powerful tool for achieving their political ends. This is mistaken because, as the Buddha taught, karma shapes the world. And right now, we are shaping the world. So how does this work? Well, you've probably been on a subway or a train or a bus at some time, and there could be 10 or 20 people in the bus. Now, if there's just one person on board who is very agitated, they could be neurotic, they could be suffering from drug addiction, but they're visibly upset or agitated or tense or nervous. This has a profound effect on everybody around them. It's undeniable. And of course, if you're in a room of 10 people and there's 2 people who are upset, let's say there's 2 people who are fighting, then it really affects the atmosphere of the room. It makes everyone agitated. There could be a situation, a room full of 10 people, let's say at work, and they're all upset. There's some kind of argument going on. Now, the whole thing might have started with just 2 people fighting, but eventually this spreads through the whole group. It's the domino effect. Now imagine, at that point, someone comes into the room. It's someone that is universally respected by the others. Not only that, there's someone who's known for being calm and clear-headed. Now that individual can diffuse the entire situation in a matter of minutes. At the same time, somebody could come into the room who's very angry and unskillful, who just stirs up the situation and it all turns into a big brawl. This is the effect of karma. Communication only happens superficially through words. In general, when 2 people come together who are enemies, then it's very likely there's going to be an argument. But that's not necessarily the case. It all depends on causes and conditions. There is always something you can do to diffuse the situation. And likewise, a situation might turn out to be very positive in the end. The problem is, we come to the conversation with preconceptions. We already have in our mind that this person is our enemy, and so it seems in some ways that the outcome is already determined. But things are never determined. It all depends on the motivation and the actions of the individuals involved. And currently, we're living on a planet with 7 or 8 billion people. And at times it seems like it's a tinderbox, and the entire thing is just waiting to explode. And so, as a spiritual practitioner, it's your responsibility. You have to do your best not to add to the negativity, not to put more fuel on the fire. The reason why we meditate is to develop a calm and peaceful mind, one that is not easily triggered or falls sway to anger and attachment and ignorance. Now, if it were the case that everything was predetermined and decided by some higher force, then there really wouldn't be anything we could do about it. So our only recourse would be to accept the situation. But it's not like that. We are responsible for our own delusions. It is our own negativity that shapes the world, and we all contribute to this. And it's not an immediate effect. It's something that evolves over time. And currently, we're on a swift trajectory to hardship and conflict. The world is on fire, and it seems like everybody's doing their best to add more fuel to that fire. The fact that conspiracy, outrage, and disinformation are so profitable is not something that's going to be overlooked by the greedy. It's not going to be overlooked by the charlatans. As I said a million times before, do not accept the trite statements of others easily. Rather, investigate for yourself. Remain mindful and hold your ground. Keep your center. Try not to get carried away by the animosity in the world. So as I said, there are 3 gates of karma, three gates of our actions: body, speech, and mind. And mind is the most important of these, but we tend to think that physical actions are the most important thing. Essentially, it's ideas that change the world. And thankfully, in the modern era, we have some very striking examples of this. One can say quite clearly that Mahatma Gandhi, a single individual, transformed the world, and especially his own native country of India, one of the most populous countries in the world, with hundreds of millions of people in it. But everything started from a single idea, and that was based on the traditional Hindu teachings of non-violence. What Gandhi realized is that the power of the people is far more potent than the power of kings and generals. And by a single idea, he toppled the rule of the mighty British Empire over his native Indian people. And it was the same for Nelson Mandela. And the fact is, we can change the world for good or bad through ideas. For example, Adolf Hitler changed the world in a very negative way and brought suffering and death to millions of people. And he did so through ideas, through his ideology. And it was the same for the CCP and Mao Zedong. It all starts with ideas. And it's our responsibility as spiritual practitioners to give rise to virtuous and positive thoughts, to generate bodhicitta, that is loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings, whether they be near and dear to us or even our enemies. So whether or not you're a Buddhist, or whether or not you believe in such a thing as karma, cause, and effect, then I think we can all agree that all mundane appearances arise out of causes and conditions, whether that be the Big Bang or an argument in the workplace. In order for karma, cause, and effect to work, then what we need is that subtle influences can have great effects on final outcomes. And this is precisely what is taught in the theory of chaos mathematics, that small perturbations in initial conditions can lead to vast differences in final outcomes. In fact, without this principle, then there would be no world as we experience it today. As we know, on the early stages of the Big Bang, there were infinitesimal small variations in temperature of the radiation field that formed the Big Bang. And if it weren't for that, then all the variation that we experience now in our universe would not exist. It would be totally different. And that's because small perturbations in initial conditions lead to vast differences in final outcomes. And this is precisely the way that one person can make a profound change in the entire world through a single idea. But it's not enough just having ideas. You have to teach these to others, and it is once others have come to see the truth of this knowledge for themselves, then it becomes their own personal mental karma. And the final step is to act out in accordance with our beliefs. And you should act out in a way that is virtuous at all times. And that's why, on this path, we start off by generating bodhicitta. We generate bodhicitta because bodhicitta is taught to be the supreme cause for achieving awakening. And it is my sincere wish that you should enter this path and progress swiftly on the way to supreme awakening and liberation from samsara. And so I'm willing to do whatever I can to use my three gates of karma, karma of body, speech, and mind, to help transform your way of thinking. But it's not enough just accepting the statements of others. You have to make these personal for yourself. And the way you do that is by contemplating on them. You contemplate these truths to see if they're valid or not. Famously, the Buddha taught, "Do not accept what I teach out of mere reverence or respect. Like a goldsmith tests gold, by burning, rubbing, and cutting it. See if it's authentic for yourself." And this is the path. And so don't listen to negative influencers on social media who are spouting disinformation and conspiracy theory. You have to hold your own ground, and don't accept the trite statements of others. Test it for yourself to see if it's true. And once you have come to see the truth, then it is time to act. Well, that's about all I had to say this evening. So until next time, then see you later.